everybody, I'm Lauren. If that didn't come across a little bit ago, I'm Lauren Peck. I go to Heelan. I'm a senior. I play soccer and basketball. I do kind of well in school. I mean, if you see me before, it's probably from playing sports. I took my first class here in 8th grade, and then Manoj kind of was like, you should tutor. And so then I became a tutor after that. So I've been doing this for almost 4 years now. So I've done 3 or 4 ACT classes. Usually they don't start off this hectic, so I'm sorry about that. I've done a lot of just like individual tutoring, but getting more used to this. Right now I have a 36 in reading and a 35 in English, but I'll be teaching reading for this one. There's another 2 that does English. Has anybody in here already taken the ACT? Yeah, a few of you? Okay, perfect. So there's going to be a few things that are going to be really helpful during this class. One thing in particular is to write down what I put on the board. And definitely if I talk too quickly, which I tend to do, which I'm probably doing right now, just let me know, ask me what I said, just ask for clarification, it'll be fine. And then there's going to be a homework sheet that he either sends out or prints out. Doing the homework is going to be really beneficial. And when you do it, make sure that you're doing it to learn and not just to do it. Just basically make it worth your time. And then for other classes in the future, come to class prepared with questions over the homework or maybe something that wasn't super clear last class that you just want to go over again. And then during class, please ask questions. It's really awkward if I'm just up here talking for like an hour or 2 and nobody else says anything. And it really helps me know what I need to focus on to see what I'm not making clear or just stuff that's maybe a little harder than I realize. And when you ask questions in class, it helps you remember, and there's going to probably be somebody that also has the same question. And it really just makes class more interesting because I doubt that anybody here really wants to listen to me talk for an hour. If you have questions while you're doing homework, you can ask me the next time we have reading class, or you can text Manoj, or use WhatsApp. I mean, that's new this time. I've never used it before, but I think it'll probably be pretty clear to figure out. And I can also stay back after class. If there was something that you didn't really want to say in front of everybody, I can stay after. But just remember, if you ask questions, it doesn't make you dumb. It's making you smarter, really. So then more on the homework. There's going to be this sheet that gives you, like, class by class what you need to do. And so just follow that sheet, and it'll really help you prepare for the test. There's going to be a lot of practice tests that you're going to have to do, so take those seriously and take them timed. It helps you get used to the pressure of the actual test. And make sure that you always correct your practice tests. There's this one thing that's really going to help. It's if you go through and mark questions that you got wrong, just dash the number or something, but don't write down the right answer right away. Go back and retry the question and then see if you got it right that time. It'll help you see the right process of going through the questions. What else what I just said. Basically, that process just builds your problem-solving skills of more questions of that type. So it'll be helpful. Are there any questions so far about what I've talked about? No? Okay, perfect. Oh, also, if anybody has to go to the bathroom, just get up and go. You don't have to ask me. It's going to be way down this hallway to the left. Okay. If you can grab out your notebooks and pencils, we're going to take some notes. For those that just joined, we're going to start taking some notes, so if you want to grab out a notebook and a pencil, that'll be great. Okay, like I said, I'll be teaching reading, so we're going to talk about some of the basic facts about the reading test. If you're online, will you mute, please? Okay, so the basic things to know about the reading test is that there are 40 questions that you'll have 35 minutes to do, and it'll be broken down into 4 passages, and it'll always have 10 questions per passage. And so, if you do some math, that'll be about 8 minutes and 45 seconds per passage. But ideally, you'll do it in 8 so that you have time left over at the end to go over questions that you've skipped or just want to come back to later. They're going to take you more time. Every test will have this same setup. Yeah.
So is it like required to do it in 8 minutes, or is that just like to keep it like at a good pace?
So that would just be to pace yourself. You'll have 35 minutes to do it however you want. Any other questions about this? Okay, then we're going to move on. This eraser's not the best, but that's okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about the types of passages. The first type is going to be prose fiction. It's basically going to be a narration. So prose fiction is basically just going to be a fiction story. It's going to be, if you were to like pick any book off the shelf in a library, that's the type of story you're going to be reading. The keys that you want to look for are basically just the theme and the big picture. It's going to be what a lot of the questions revolve around. Second type of passage is social sciences. It's basically going to be history or social studies related, that type of thing. And the key things to think about during this passage is going to be the subject and the point of view. So some examples of topics that you'd find in this passage would be stuff about like the presidents, the government, that type of thing. Those are common. Or just really anything historical. Yeah?
Are all the passages the same length, or do they differ in size?
They'll differ a little bit. They're all going to have 10 questions about them, but they're going to differ. So sometimes, like, the passage will be an easier read, but the questions might take a little longer, so they'll make the passage shorter. It's like the time is, like, a little better, but they'll be relatively the same size. The third type of passage is humanities. This is going to be about the arts. It wants you to think about the tone and the feeling the author is trying to evoke. So by the arts, it means it could be just a literal artist, like it could be talking about like Michelangelo, or it could be about music or anything of the sort, anything related to that. Also, if you can't read my handwriting, definitely ask me. I didn't realize how small I was writing. The last type of passage is going to be natural science. And wants you to think about the details and facts. So this one is going to be exactly what it sounds like. It is going to be science related. Yeah, it could vary from biology to chemistry to physical science, anything of the sort. And this is going to be the order that shows up in every single test. So there's not going to be one that like blindsides you and all of a sudden natural science is the first passage. It's always going to be in this order.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
I didn't understand what you meant by, like, in social science, what you meant by the point of view, like.
So that's going to be, it's like, from what perspective is the author writing it in? Like, is it a narration that's an overview of everything, or is it like first person perspective, like I did this, I did that type of thing? Hopefully that makes sense. Is everyone good with this? Okay, these markers don't erase, so I'm gonna grab a different color really quick. Let's hope something here works better. Maybe we'll choose that. Okay. So, next, we'll talk about the types of questions. First type is going to be the main idea. In other words, that's the big picture. Second type is the details. In other words, the little picture. Then there's going to be vocab and context. So this one's a little different. You might not have seen something like this before. The question will be formulated like in line 17 in paragraph 2. What does that word most closely mean, basically? So it'll just be an underlined word. The next type is inference. And then author's method or view. So for inference, that's basically, it's like supported by the passage, strongly supported by the passage, but not directly stated. And then author's method or view is just basically like the tone they're writing in or why they wrote the way they did. Is everyone good with this? Okay. The next thing is going to be passage methods. Oops, I lied. Wow, that's not right at all. Okay, there are 4 ways you could go about doing a passage, but you really only want to do 2 of them. The first way you could do it is to skim the passage, which would take you about 3 minutes, and then read the questions and do them, which would take you about 5. And then the second way you could do it is to read the passage in 4 minutes, and then do the questions in 4 minutes too. So those are the 2 ways that are going to be the most beneficial for doing these reading tests. If you are the type of person that can just look something over once and really like take in what's happening and understand it, then I would say skimming the passage and then doing the questions in 5 minutes would be the best option for you. But if you need to do a little bit more in-depth reading, then I would say go with this one and read the passage in 4 minutes and then leave yourself 4 minutes to do the questions. This is the method that I use most often because I like to really like take in what I'm reading before I answer the questions so that I don't have to go back and forth a bunch of times. And then these 2 down here, the third one is read the questions and then mark the passage that's going to take you way too long because you're going to have to go to the questions and then back to the passage and then back to the questions. And then when we start doing reading tests or practice tests, you're going to see why that's just not going to be possible with the time you're allotted. And then this one was to read the questions and then read the passage. Basically the same thing, but both of these are just things that you're not going to want to do, so you can really just cross them off. And this will come with practice, finding out which way works best for you. Are there any questions on anything we've talked about yet? Anybody online? Okay, sounds good. The next thing we're going to talk about is what to do before reading. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is to do the passages in order of ease. So I'm going to take a second to explain that before we go into what else you're going to do before you read. So, just a little bit ago, we talked about the types of passages that there are, where there's prose fiction, social sciences, humanities, all those. There are some people that are really good at reading, like, about science, but hate fiction stories. So, it would make a lot more sense to start off with what your strengths are. So if you're really good at reading about science and just understanding and answering questions about it, then you're going to want to do the natural science passage first. So that would look like you get your reading test, you flip all the way to passage 4 before you even look at passage 1, and you do passage 4. And then you basically just go from there. Like whatever's easiest for you, you want to do those ones first. It helps it go faster, you build your confidence up. It's just going to be overall better for you in the end. So the way we're going to figure that out is basically just through doing practice. You're going to eventually find out what you're really good at and what you might need a little bit more work on, and that's fine. But finding that order is going to be really important for doing well in reading. Okay, and then the next thing you're going to want to do before you read is to take note of the passage context. So taking note of the passage context just means that, in every reading test, before every passage, there's going to be this little baby paragraph at the top of the page that tells you what it's about, basically. It tells you what they extracted the passage from, who wrote it, that type of thing. So you're going to want to look at that so that you can, get yourself ready for what you're about to read, get yourself in the right headspace. And it's only going to take you a few seconds, so it's really not going to, put you behind on your timing. So I would really recommend reading that before you go into each passage. Now this step, it might sound a little silly, but it is definitely very important. It's to force yourself to be interested in what you're reading. It's only going to be 8 minutes of your life of reading this passage, so it's not going to kill you to do it. And definitely don't let yourself get distracted. Because if you let yourself get distracted, you could be 3 paragraphs in and have no idea what you're reading about, and you have to go do it again, and it's just going to waste time, and it's going to put you behind in the rest of the test, which you definitely do not want. So, like, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of social sciences, or natural science, I mean. But you just gotta pretend like it's your favorite thing in the world for those 8 or so minutes. Does everyone have this down? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, next thing is while you're reading. The main thing you want to do while you're reading, other than reading, is to take notes and underline, also known as like indexing the passage. So you want to take notes about the most important things you're reading. So dates, names, relationships, those are going to be pretty important. It's stuff to help you figure out your placement. Like when you go to the questions and you're like, oh, I remember I read that name. If you have it like circled and stuff like that, you're going to find that spot a lot quicker than if you had to reread a bunch of stuff. So basically this is just going to save you time. But you don't want to write too much because then that wastes time. So it's a happy medium. Then there's after reading. So, the first thing that you do after reading is you're going to read the questions. But before you go and read all the answer choices, make your own answer in your mind first. Formulate your own answer, and then look at what they've given you. This allows you to not really be influenced by what some of the answers might be. Because sometimes you read the first one and you're like, oh, it's definitely that. But it's actually the fourth one. And you just never get to it. But if you make up your mind first and then find what you're looking for, it's going to actually be your answer. The next one is the process of elimination. Okay, so I'm sure we've all used the process of elimination at some point, but in reading tests, there's only going to be one correct answer. So if you find something that's even slightly wrong in the answer choice, that one is completely wrong. Because there's going to be one that matches up perfectly. And every answer is going to be backed up by the passage. So it's not just going to be something you thought of off the top of your head. All the information you need is going to be in there. Which can be kind of tricky because we talked about how like inferences is one of the ways that they like make their questions, but it's still backed up by the passage in that case.
Oh, but what about those questions that ask like multiple answers? Like, you know, for some of the passages, they ask to choose like more than one answer. How do you know which is correct in that?
There's not going to be any for the ACT where you choose more than one answer. There's just going to be one choice. Does that make sense? Hopefully. The next one is to answer what the question is asking. Okay, so to answer what the question is asking is going to be really important because they try and throw you off any way that they can. So some of the answer choices can be factually correct, but they just might not answer what the question is actually asking. So for example, if it was like, what's the dog's name? It's never going to be that simple, but let's just say it is for a moment. So the question is, what's the dog's name? And answer choice number 1 is the sky's blue. And answer choice 2 is like Harley. The first one is factually true, the sky is blue. But that's just not at all what it's asking, so you are just not going to choose that one for your answer. The next choice was an actual name, and let's say that was actually in the passage. That's going to be your answer. Okay, I'm going to write the other steps. Next one is to make sure the passage supports your answer. So I said a little bit about this earlier, about how everything that you need is going to be found in the passage, but make sure the passage supports your answer because really you don't need to know anything before you go into this test. All you need to know, well, for the reading test, all you need to know is what you read. Then the last step is to, okay, this will make sense once I write it out. So this step is that if you're more than 30 seconds in and not 30 seconds from the end, skip and come back. So this is referring to answering questions again. So if you have been working on this one question for more than 30 seconds and you don't think that you're going to answer it in another 30, skip it and come back to it. All these questions are worth the same. So you really want to do the easiest ones first so that you get the most points you can, obviously. So, yeah. If you're more than 30 seconds in and not 30 seconds from the end, skip it and come back to it if you have time. Oops. Any questions about any of this?
You mean come back like at the end after you read all of them, or like once you get to the last question per passage?
When I do it, I personally come back to it after I've done every other question in that passage. But if it makes more sense to you to come back to it at the way end of the test after you've done like all of the easy ones, that would also be fine. So really that's kind of personal preference. Now we're going to talk about split passages. Okay, so this is what a split passage looks like, kind of. The way you want to go about these is to read and answer the questions for the first passage, and then read and answer the questions for the second passage, and then answer the joint questions. So, most of the time, the way these look, well, there's two ways they're going to look. Most of the time, the way these look is that passage A will be written like this, and then over here, it'll have like passage A questions, and then it'll be like 1, 2, 3. And so you're going to want to go and do those first, and then you're going to want to go and read passage B, and then like over here it'll be like passage B questions, and it'll be 4, 5, 6, and then the last ones will be questions from passage A and B, and then there's going to be ones that are like related all together. So those ones are super simple because they split it all up for you, which is really nice. But you are going to come across some where questions for passage A and passage B are just intermixed, and you're going to have to figure out which one you need to read first. But that's going to be the way you want to do it so you don't get confused with what you've read in each passage, because this test really tries to trick you a lot, as much as they can, which is going to be what we talk about next. Does everyone have this down?
A and passage B are going to be of the same topic, right?
Yeah, they will be about the same topic. Yeah, good question.
Will all 4 passages be laid out like that, or only like one of them?
You'll usually only find it with one throughout the whole test. Sometimes there's not even any, but it'll just be one. It shows up a lot in natural sciences. It'll like compare scientists' opinions or findings, that type of thing. And then the last, or I'll talk about trap answers. Okay, so the first two types of trap answers are distortion and a misused detail. So distortion is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to distort the information or details from the passage so that they're no longer correct. And then a misused detail will be something that is found in the passage, but it doesn't answer the question. So it's going to be similar to what we talked about a little bit ago about making sure that your answer actually matches the question it's asking instead of just being factual. Then the next type is out of scope. And then the last two are out of scope and extremes. So out of scope is going to also be just what it sounds like. It'll be information that's not covered in the passage. So it's going to be out of the context of what you've just read. And like I said a little bit ago, everything that you need will be found on the paper. You're not going to have to bring in any prior knowledge to the test for this reading test. And then extremes are going to be words they use like always, never, best, worst, etc. Other really broad terms like that. I guess really narrow terms. So for these ones, I would say unless it's like explicitly stated in the passage, like something is always this or never that, probably don't choose an answer choice that says always or never, because it isn't actually going to match what you said or what they've said in the passage. Any questions about those? Okay, and the last thing is just a reiteration of what I've been trying to kind of drill in, is to always choose the best answer choice based on support from the passage. The test is really meant to test your guys' comprehension skills and that type of thing, not your knowledge of what you've learned about reading or that subject in the past. So everything you need to know will be found on that paper. And yeah, just always choose the best answer based on what the passage says. And that's the last thing. So, are there any questions about anything reading related, class related, ACT in general?
So is there a reading, English, and a math section, or how many sections are there?
There's 4 sections. So, the order, you'll start with English, and then you'll go to math, and then reading, and then science.
So will math and science be like more factual compared to like reading would?
Yeah, I would say so. So, math is going to be 60 questions, and it'll be all math problems. Like, nothing, it'll just all be math. There'll be some, like, story problems, just formulas, that type of thing. English is going to be a lot of grammar rules, just stuff that works best, a lot of grammar. Science, that's going to be pretty similar to reading, actually, where everything you need to know will be found on that page. So, like, if you haven't taken a senior year science class, that's fine. Everything you need to know will be found in that passage. So, it's a lot like what we've been saying, how everything you need will be in there, and you don't need to bring in any prior knowledge, but yeah, you'll always find those 4 tests in that same order. They'll never switch that. Any other questions about the ACT?
If we have time, do you want to highlight the differences between SAT and ACT?
Okay, that might be a better question for Manoj because I've only taken the PSAT, but I've heard that from my experience, the PSAT was a lot easier based on timing than the ACT. ACT is a lot more under pressure with time and stuff, like how well you can do the things quickly. PSAT, they give you a lot more time, so you're really not stressed at all for that. It's really similar questions, but that's probably something better to ask Manoj because I've never actually seen like the SAT. Yeah.
So in order to get like a 36, do you have to get like every question right, or is it like a certain like limit?
Pretty close. In some tests, you have to get every question right to get a 36. In others, you can miss 1 or 2 and still be at a 36, but it depends on the difficulty of the test. Yeah. There's, in your guys' like practice books, there are scales that you can grade them on, and that'll show you a lot like what the actual test will be graded by. Anything else? These are really good questions. Anybody online? No? Okay. Then